Well, normally I have something to show off that I've made, but today 3 amazing makers have agreed to show a bit of their making processes as a special treat. We've got Chris from Glowcraft, Jamie from Navi's Oddities, and our good friend Drew from Dicey Encounters. They're going to show off something different to what I normally do in this video, so hopefully you'll see something cool or learn something to improve your skills. I know I did. We've all been working together on this advent calendar project, link in the description below for that by the way, and so I figured what better way to start this video than by showing off a little bit of how that advent calendar is made. It's being made by Glowcraft, who's based in Victoria, Australia, and they've been working at stuff for about 4 years now, so they're getting pretty darn good at it. Chris wanted to make a calendar that they could use as a display afterwards, so they started creating a design in a program called SketchUp, which they would then convert using a secret that I'm not allowed to talk about into a 2D layout, and they'd use another program called Lightburn to arrange the files so that they could laser cut the shapes out, which is rad. They've got their own custom laser cutter, even though with a name like Glowcraft, you might expect them to use a Glowforge, but this one is massive by comparison. Obviously, I sped that footage up there, but this is non-sped up footage. This cuts way faster than I would expect it to out of the acrylic. They've got both wood and acrylic, and as you can imagine, those cut pretty differently, so they have to adjust their tools accordingly. A lot of prototyping to test fit the cuts happens, and they go back from the beginning until they measure just right, and then they lay it back out in Lightburn so that they can minimize the amount of material wasted for such a large project, and then any scrap they do have, they try and repurpose for other projects. That was obviously a very quick look into his making process. It gets immensely more technical, but if he showed us too much more, he might be out of the job. So thanks, Chris, for letting us see your cool high-level view. You all may actually remember this maker. It's Dicey Encounters. He's the one who made my shell molds, where I made my blood splatter dice, my stained glass dice, as well as my Bob Ross set of dice. Those were all some of my absolute favorites, and I couldn't have done it without the shell molds. So if I've talked about Dicey Encounters, that's this guy.
I'm doing stuff. Wow, look at me.
If you'll remember in the video that I made with my black and white dies, I tried using his silicone, but when I used the tape, it came out all sticky. Well, he said that there's a specific tape that you can use that is not only easier because it's bigger, but it doesn't have that sticky issue that has uncured silicone on it. His preferred mold housing is these really large circular cookie cutters. I couldn't find them anywhere, otherwise I would have copied them a long time ago. Remember in my molds where I would cut out my keys and registration marks? Well, he puts his with these little dot type things right onto the tape. Good makers do that. They make their own key and registration marks proper. I just cut mine out, but you should follow his style.
There are so many better methods to do this, but this is mine.
He uses a slightly smaller cookie cutter to make the blank insert mold, or like what I painted on for my Bob Ross dice. You could really do whatever you want with them. He also uses a different tape. You don't have to, but if you do, you can use petroleum jelly on there to really make sure nothing sticks and the silicone doesn't have any issues. He's also super smart, and this is something that I definitely should do. He has a mixing cup that he uses just for silicone, and he has it pre-marked for how much he needs to mix part A and B, and he's also got this drill that mixes for him, so he doesn't have to do it by hand. That would save me so many hand cramps and so many minutes mixing. I would love to do that. I just need to do it. He pops them in the pressure pot at 35 psi, which means all his dice that he casts have to be below that. He probably typically casts them at around 30 psi if I were to guess. Now, when he makes his keys and registration marks on the outside, we actually both agree, just like how I do it on my molds, it's better to cut it out because any inconsistencies really help your molds to lock in there. Some makers will disagree, but you know, that's up to each maker. Now, he puts the petroleum jelly on with a brush, which is way smarter than the Q-tip way that I do it. He can get way closer to the edges, but when he's doing the blank faces, he just covers the whole thing in petroleum jelly. This is to make sure that when he puts the second layer of silicone on, it doesn't stick. When you're doing a face that matters, like one with numbers, you don't want to do that because you might obscure the numbers, but in those blank ones, it really doesn't matter. Luckily, his cookie cutters also will go on perfectly onto the silicone afterwards. He doesn't have to do tape and hot glue like I do, so his way is way better. If you can find really big circular cookie cutters, do it. He's an amazing mold maker, and I have never had a problem using his molds, and I've used them for dozens of times without ever having any fails, and so his method is pretty foolproof. In addition to the molds, he's actually showing us how he's sanding his dice that he made for the advent calendar. He's sanding with the first 2 grits of Zona paper on every face except the 20s. On that one, he's going all the way through, and that will give it a really cool matte look on every other face except the D20, which you'll be able to see right through and see the pattern on the inside. This video that he made, he said he's not a videographer, and rip him in the comments because he's right. But in the final product here, it looks fantastic. I have no notes on it. An amazing die and an amazing maker. Thank you again, Drew, for letting us into your process. For this last maker, Jamie from Navi's Oddities, I'm actually going to let her whole 30-minute resin casting process play in the background because I have a lot to talk about, and I thought seeing that whole process, even though it's sped up, might be something pretty interesting. So for her molds, she actually uses MoldStar 20T silicone, which I don't know if I've ever shown off on this channel because it's such a quick casting silicone. It only has 3 to 5 minutes to mix, color, cast, and then get it in the pressure pot, but then it's done in 30 minutes, so she can make a lot of molds very quickly. She also says dragon skin is a close second, but it's got a 5-hour cure time. One thing that I'm noticing from all of the best mold makers that I know is they like to use dragon skin, so maybe that's something that we should all learn, and I used it in my last one, so maybe I need to get more familiar with that product. She cures her silicone at 40 to 45 psi, so she doesn't run into any issues whenever she's curing her resin in the pressure pot. And she uses Critcast resin. She says it's the best quality resin that she's found, and she has like 2,000 different resin colorants, inclusions, etc., pastes, liquids, whatever you want, she's probably got it, though her favorite things to work with are purple and pinks, she says. She's put some crystals in the mold that you're watching here as well, but it's cold where she works in Kansas. I live in Texas, so I never have to deal with this, but she keeps a barrel warmer on Gretchen, which is what she calls her pressure pot. I absolutely need a name for my pressure pot, so if you can think of one, let me know in the comments down below, call it out. But she has something that she calls her corset, which is just that barrel warmer to keep things warm so that the silicone or the resin cures properly. She cranks it up to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and then she can pull her castings at just 5 hours. She has a dehumidifier running at all times to avoid issues called amine blush. I need to get off the internet because when she typed this up for me, I read it as anime blush, and so yeah, I should probably get off the internet. But it helps to prevent water or moisture to be absorbed into your resin. She also loves using leftover resin for projects, like the dice that you're going to see here being polished is a couple of different resins from different projects put all together, and she always casts her dice at 30 to 35 psi, which is notably lower than what she casts her silicone molds in. That way she never has any issues with her molds, and the dice come out perfectly. Okay, enough of the fast forwarding. Let's look at her demolding process, because there is something genius here. When she takes her resin off of her silicone molds, she uses a lint roller to pick up any resin that's left on there. That's fantastic. I spend so much time trying to get the little resin bits off of there so it doesn't mess up the next dice. Then she cuts off any flashing just like anybody else does with an X-Acto knife, and then she actually separates what she calls the sanding and polishing stages. I consider them to be the same thing, but she takes these nail files that are glass just to file off the edges until they're flat, and she does that by feel and by hand. She also has shaky hands. She wanted to be able to show off that even with shaky hands, you can still do this for anybody else who's worried about having shaky hands. So if she can make these amazing dice, so can you. So she sands off the edges like I normally have to do, but she just gets those flat, but then she polishes. I didn't edit this at all. She only polishes just a few circles on each grit because she sanded it flat with those glass nail files. She now does not have to spend minutes on minutes on minutes on each single paper. She can just do a few circles and it works perfectly, and she's got a glass-like shine on her die. I actually like this method a lot, and I might do that if I was doing this as a hobby, but since I'm showing you all how to do it in my videos, I probably won't show that because it just requires you to buy more things, but it is a fantastic method, and obviously her results speak for themselves. As far as inking her dice, she uses regular acrylic paint, but then uses paint thinner to thin hers down, where I just use water. Just painting it in the normal way, she just uses a napkin rather than her finger to wipe it off, though sometimes she's got to use her finger, just like I do. But then to clean up the surfaces, she uses 99% isopropyl alcohol on some cotton swabs, and then wipes the whole thing down with some Novus polish spray and a microfiber cloth. But then she also has a Dremel and a really soft wool brush on the end of it, and she uses a ton of that Scratch X polish, so you want to make sure you have plenty of that on there, or else you'll scratch the surface, and bada bing bada boom, that is a fantastic looking D20 right there. Huge thank you to Jamie from Navi's Oddities, and actually huge thank you to all the amazing makers that I got to work with on this advent calendar project with Lud. It really let me show off some stellar creators that normally just don't get a lot of limelight, and if you want to check out the calendar, it's in the description below, as is the link to the Glowcraft shop and Navi's shop / website where her TikTok is that she makes process videos like she showed off here. Drew's got a link tree to his shop, and he also streams 2 tabletop games that you can check out, or even hire him to be your online DM, which is great because he's extremely talented. Also, don't forget to check out Hedron's Gemstone D20 video. It's absolutely gorgeous. Hopefully you'll subscribe to check out some of my stuff while you're at it, and like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you disliked it. I want to hear that too, but either way, I hope you have a fantastic day.